pains me that we're not all gathered together in the incredibly beautiful Africa Center, but thank you for inviting us into conversation in this virtual village that you've helped to convene here. This has been an extraordinary discussion to listen to and now to join in on. I'm proud to be part of this, but I'm mostly inspired by all of it. I found the remarks by the UN High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet to be incredibly illuminating. I want to thank partners like Melissa and the Proteus Fund for all that they're doing to help stand up the right to protest. I'll say a little bit more about a fund that we've co-generated and created inside of the Open Society Foundation to really concretize the work of rights. I have to say that I'm really moved by Mary and her work. I want to thank her for calling out the brutal violation of rights of athletes in Iran and the horrific circumstances that led to the execution of Navid Afshari. Horrific. Thank you for sounding that out, Mary. And I have to say, Nneka, you just blow me away. I have been so impressed by all of our sisters in the WNBA for standing up a sophisticated response to challenges that we're encountering right now. You said in this that you've managed to stand up a conversation in your league, primarily because you have inherently political lives as mothers, as members of the community, with a league that's over 70% women of color. Find that to be inspiring. Thank you for that leadership, and know that we're sitting in solidarity with you. Solidarity is a key part of this, Nneka. When you talk about the space that athletes occupy in the game, on the court, and in civilian life, I just want you to know that there are so many of us who have been in civil society, who have been activists, who have been shaped primarily by the interventions of athletes. It's true for me when I think about the heroic example of people like Althea Gibson and Arthur Ashe, of course, Muhammad Ali, right straight up through Colin Kaepernick. Let me tell you experience that I had when I went to South Africa for the first time 30 years ago, when Nelson Mandela had been released from jail. And I had the good fortune to be part of a civil rights delegation that went to help stand up the new majority into power. And I was in the company of Madiba, and in his little office that he had then, and in the office that's enshrined today in the museum to Madiba, he had books about Ali, photographs for Ali, and he said that for him, even while he was locked up, that athlete, that voice, that determination and conviction to be unapologetically Black and free was his North Star in that period. Just as Nneka, you and the sisters from WNBA are the North Stars for so many of us right now. Peter, I don't really quite know what to say to you. I'm humbled to be in conversation with you. We all have been following your journey for some time now. It's terrible to see what's occurred to you and the entire labor movement, but in truth, civil society and the whole rights movement in Zimbabwe, the record of arrest, the overturning of principles in the Constitution in Zimbabwe must be addressed. Thank you so much for literally putting your soul on the line for freedom in Zim and setting an example in the continent and in the world. You said before, Peter, that solidarity is the engine. I want to give an example of another act of solidarity in athleticism that I think should speak to the Black and white divide today. Uzo mentioned Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who of course stuck up their fist in defiance in the 1968 Olympics. But what's often not noticed is the act of another Peter that day in 1968, Peter Norman, who was the Australian athlete who finished in second place and won the silver medal that day, hailed from Australia, a country not necessarily known for having a great history of taking care of indigenous rights. Peter Norman that day wore the Olympic Project for Human Rights badge, and he hung his head in demonstration, in protest, as a white man in solidarity with John Carlos and Thomas Smith that day. Let's not lose track of those kinds of historic examples in this moment that we sit in right now, that's both perilous but has tremendous promise for coalition building and for true and deep solidarity. Christoph, I'm always impressed with the work that you do in the Human Rights Committee. I have to tell you, as somebody who misses his South African home, that it's so good to hear your South African accent. In going in and out of the country over many decades, I always thought that protest was a national sport in South Africa. It's certainly a full contact sport. And the work that you're taking up right now in the committee provides the framework that we need for how protests should be policed around the world, including the basic rules of engagement for assemblies and providing clarity on the roles of authorities and policing protests. You know, Uzo, you gave a little snapshot of my biography. I'm here today as the president of a global philanthropy, the largest human rights philanthropy in the world, expressly because of the willingness of my mentor, John Lewis, and my inspirations like Archbishop Tutu to put their shoulder against the machine of injustice and to stand in the line of fire on behalf of progress in the name of the very idea of justice. They were, Archbishop Tutu still is, and John Lewis was, an extraordinary troublemaker. I've tried in my humble way to be a troublemaker myself, first standing in solidarity with those who were fighting for the Black majority in South Africa, becoming a labor activist and protesting for the rights of workers, and spending the majority of my young life and adult life on the front lines of work against police brutality. I've also experienced harm in protest and being out in protest and being attacked by the police. So I know how terribly important all of this work is. The situation right now, Uzo, in the United States where I sit and globally, both inspires us to lean in and make deeper investments, but we also recognize that it's a time of real peril, from Zimbabwe to Belarus to Hong Kong. Demonstrations, boycotts, dissent against authoritarianism and structural inequalities are increasing. And it's our young people themselves, many who aren't even yet old enough to vote in their societies, who know that their first civic duty is to stand up for rights and to say no against authoritarianism. Unfortunately, the very leaders who should embrace that critique and see it as an opportunity to improve participation for citizens are instead lashing out. We've seen the pushback against Black Lives Matter in the US. Peter has given us a sense of what he's experienced and endured in Zimbabwe. I won't rehearse the brutality that we've seen in the streets of Belarus. It's similar in Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana. If you look at the African continent, Uzo, you know that there are more individuals who have lost their lives from being brutalized in response to the closures than from COVID itself. It's a profound thing. Christoph, in your homeland of South Africa, we've had over 200,000 South Africans who've been arrested allegedly in violation of COVID restrictions. So there's a real pushback against dissent and a closing of the public space. Mary gave a sense earlier of some of the things that philanthropy is taking on and doing right now to stand up those rights. I'm proud that in OSF, where we have a living donor, George Soros, who's been accused of paying protesters, which is really an affront to protesters themselves. Right now, we're doubling down on our sense of what the moment needs. We created an initial seed investment of $1.5 million to work and inspire the international donor community to open up a collaborative that's grounded in regional hubs in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Latin America, to stand up rapid response hubs for frontline organizations with lawyers providing emergency legal and medical support to peaceful protesters who are attacked. I'm hoping that we're going to inspire other donors to come in. Similar to the $220 million investment we made in Black Lives in the US, we hope that this will be generative. So I'll end there, Uzo, with again a note of appreciation, a humble salute to all of our panelists who are taking the fight to the streets and speaking truth to power, and to thank you for convening us today, and to say that we intend to be on this journey endlessly until there's justice for Peter and for those rights workers like him.